Another character from Commotion in Your Heart I wanted to follow up. Not a character, a real life person, but this kind of a character, this Gordon Lisk, a.k.a.
Oh
Captain
my
Fiction.
gosh.
Although that is such an interesting story. It's not clear to me from the reading, because it's kind of ambiguous about how pro Captain Fiction you were versus how maybe a little bit uncomfortable by Captain.
Well,
So
both.
tell the uninitiated about Captain Fiction and
Captain
maybe
Fiction.
unpack that a little as well.
It's a guy named Gordon Lish. It's Lish. And
Lish.
he, was a New Yorker. He worked with Knopf. Everybody thought he was the greatest thing in the 80s. And he was, he was a little crazy, really. So I thought, oh, I'm going to check this out. And he was famous for discovering people. Everybody wanted to be discovered by him. And so I went to this workshop, and he showed up in full safari regalia, including a pith helmet, which he never took off all day. And he was just awful. He got mad if people got up to go to the bathroom. There was a half hour for lunch. It lasted like from 8 until 5 or something. And his method of teaching was he would pick up a manuscript and he would read until he got bored, which was usually maybe 3 sentences tops. And then he would put it down and he would tell you why it was so awful. And, the room, the atmosphere in the room was it was awful. But, whatever. The thing is, I actually went twice. Don't ask me why, but I did. And what I realized was I didn't like him as a person. And what I learned was, one, it might be great to be discovered by somebody who had that kind of power, but then you were his in a way, and he had a very specific way of thinking about writing. And if you didn't write like that, he wouldn't back you, so you would have to agree to be the kind of writer that he wanted you to be. And I understood that wasn't worth it. That wasn't good. But I learned some things from him because he was so obsessive. I learned something about sentences, and how sentences work. And so it was worth it. I wouldn't say I was a fan of him, but I learned something from him. And and so what I say about that is, you can get something from people, even though the experience may be really awful, but remember who you are. If you go to something like that and you feel like you have to be what he wants you to be, you lose yourself, and you don't want to do that. So when you're doing these kinds of workshops with different kinds of people, just remember who you are, and learn from them what is helpful to you, not feeling like you have to take on the whole, whatever that whole philosophy of writing is. And that was kind of where I came out on that. I didn't like him. He wasn't a nice person.
I have not a great deal of patience for folks that have some version of that idea that every successful author does these things, and that's why every book ever written is this type of book, and they're all bestsellers. That's objectively not true, sir.
No, it's not. And you have to watch out for that. As a person who's an aspiring writer, you want to make sure you enter those learning experiences in the right frame of mind. You're lucky if you find somebody, who really is on your wavelength, and then you can really learn a lot. But, because a person doesn't like your writing doesn't mean you're not a good writer. So, Gordon Lish didn't like my writing. That just meant Gordon Lish didn't like my writing. It didn't mean anything other than that. And that's sometimes hard, especially if you're not real experienced, you could feel more discouraged than you should. It's not, this is tough. This stuff is tough. You have to, you really have to learn to have a thick skin, because if you don't, you just can't keep going. So it's not for sissies.
What is?
True.
What in life is just like, I'm apathetic and a sissy, and things are going great for me. I picked the right path. I don't know what path that would be.
Yeah. So true.
Something that I know frustrates my fiction workshop kids, because they're adults. But when they come in on day one, I tell them that the first thing you need to know is that fiction is art. Art is subjective, so all art is a matter of opinion, period, the end. Read Story by Robert McKee. It will change your life. Read A Commotion in Your Heart. It will change your life. But even after that, it's still going to be, what have you got going? And I can't write your novel for you because I don't have your opinions. You're going to have to share. And I'm going to give you bad advice, not because I'm intentionally trying to sabotage you, but because I'm telling you how I would write your novel. I don't know how you are going to find the way to write your novel. And I think it would almost be worse. Well, I don't have the experience to speak from, but I think it would almost be worse to have a best selling novel that you knew somebody else had imposed things upon you, that
Sure.
it wasn't the book you wanted, but it did well.
Well,
I think it would almost be better to have your perfect book and have it in obscurity.
yeah, right. Well, Raymond Carver, the great short story writer, worked with Gordon Lish, and there's been a lot of controversy over the years about how much Gordon Lish edited those stories, to the extent that some people feel like they're not really Raymond Carver stories. They're sort of both of their stories. So yeah, I mean that's kind of a case of that. And he became super famous, but not with the stories he sort of originally wrote. And I'm not saying that good editing isn't wonderful. It is, but that kind of extensive editing is maybe a little bit different. So yeah.
Raymond Carver gets a shout out, right? There's a chapter of what we talk about when we talk about fiction.
Yeah. I love his work. He's wonderful. But yeah, that's just a great story and a great title. So I stole it. Not the story, just the title.
That's a good title.